Next one is something that popped out about house pricing and stuff like that. We talked about yesterday about the increase in the first home ownership grant. Well, not FOG, that was a different grant. In the government-run first home buyers program, which was the 5% deposit and no LMI, and them raising the caps on the value of property that could be accessed by that program, because obviously as prices went up, the number of available properties that a first home buyer could access through that program got fewer. And the figures given in that article were quite surprising. In Adelaide, for example, it was a fraction of the available suburbs under the current setup, but with the revision to valuation of it that is accessible, all of a sudden the majority of suburbs were now available for first home buyers to move into or to access the system. But you're still looking at, even with a 5% deposit, in general around Australia, you're looking at a loan up around the $600,000 to $700,000 mark, and the cost to service that at the moment is high, even though the interest rate is quite low. The capacity that a lot of people will have to pay that back will be difficult, and even to still gain a 5% deposit based on the incomes listed, we're still looking at 2 to 5 years to put that money away. But I mean, if people want to get in, they need to get in. And so this article popped up through the Sydney Morning Herald, but basically on Domain, which is the real estate side of things, basically saying that the cheaper houses are getting more expensive faster than the more expensive houses. And you're looking at, so Perth has climbed pretty much 20, so for the lower price end of the market, has climbed almost 20% in the last 3 years. So this is well and truly post-COVID. That's quite a bit. Now, Perth for a while was overpriced because the fly-in, fly-out workers for the resource sector, for the mines and gas and oil projects up in the northwest, they have a house in Perth and fly back there, etc. So there was a lot of money coming in to a limited housing supply, so that drove the pricing up. As the resources sector sort of slumped, then money fled the market, and so things corrected somewhat and the pricing came back down. But compared to other cities, Perth was kind of seen as a bit of an overheated market. But I mean, the resources collapse has passed and the sector's doing relatively well again. So again, 20% increase, that's quite a lot. I mean, Melbourne and Sydney, Sydney being the most expensive market, it's only climbed 4%, but the average house price in Sydney is now pretty much $1 million. You're talking an entry-level house is, well, depending on the suburb, you'd be lucky to get a freestanding property for anything less than 600,000 to 700,000, and that's a small place. And in some far out suburb, you're better off looking at a unit or an apartment, maybe a townhouse. But even then, the prices are very strong. Yeah, but still, 4% when it's 4% of $1 million is quite a bit of money jumping up. But yeah, Sydney had a bit of a decline last year, and people were forecasting, oh no, it's going to be a market-wide decline. Well, again, the people forecasting are the ones who had interest in it. So yeah, they're saying it's a bit odd because it's the cheaper houses is driving the market as opposed to the higher end. And tying back into that first homeowner stuff, the affordability, the availability of affordable housing stock is difficult, particularly in the cities where available expansion is constrained, i.e., Sydney, Canberra, um, to the main extent. Melbourne, Brisbane, Darwin, Ad, well, even Adelaide. Adelaide's constrained too. Um, Melbourne, Brisbane, Darwin, Perth still have directions they can expand in, but the other cities have either geographic limits or planning limits that limit the extent to which those cities can physically grow. And yeah, the this is a statistic that no one finds surprising, that home ownership amongst younger people is a lot less than it was in the past. The whole idea of mum, dad, 2.4 kids in a house, well, all of that has kind of gone by the wayside. And so uh, Gen X, the later half of Gen X, are less likely to be homeowners than, I guess, their parents. Again, not a surprise. And the issue here is half of what you bring home, so after tax, is going towards servicing mortgages. Now, when I was saying that, yep, the cost to pay off a six to $700,000 loan is quite excessive. Now, when the average income they were talking about for the first homeowners thing was like $120,000 or $140,000 combined, you're not talking about a lot of capacity. Cost to pay back a loan of that amount, you're looking probably, well, north of $1,500 a fortnight is the minimum repayment. That's a not insignificant chunk of what you bring home. And then that doesn't take into account all your other running costs. And little wonder people are dipping into superannuation and other sources to try and get the money to get into the property. And I mean, I wonder how much the difference is with people moving towards units, apartments, townhouses compared to freestanding houses. We'll see. We'll see. And it also doesn't say whether this is outright ownership or with a mortgage. I don't think these figures are outright ownership. I would be very surprised if half of this cohort own their properties outright. I think very few people below the age of 50 own a house outright, and even then, a lot of people into their 50s are paying it. The one person I knew who managed to pay their house off before they turned 50 had used their resignation payout from, they did, I think, 20 years in the Navy, and used their retirement payout, resignation payout, to basically pay most of the mortgage off. Actually, I don't know if they paid their mortgage off fully. And the other people I knew who did it were 20 or 30 years older and had sold their properties at the right time, and did have an investment property, but had now consolidated down to the one place and poured everything into paying it off. So, yeah. So obviously, yeah, I mean, the graph there shows the same. That basically, the further up the line, the older the cohort. So you're looking at, your boomers, your late boomers, late boomers, into your Gen X, starting into your Gen X. So they're increasing. I mean, as they get older, more people are owning it, but they were not owning property when they were younger. But it's sort of collapsing now for the much younger cohort because their salaries aren't getting them enough to get into the market. So, yeah, October 1, We'll see how it changes. But yeah, that that looks awful if that's supposed to be a an auction or an open house. I mean, great for the vendor, not so great for the people trying to get their foot in the door. But I don't know. I don't think that's the case there.